Today we're going to look at how to use light and shadow to give your paintings a more artistic look. Very early, the old masters discovered that a single light source, preferably high above and 3/4 on the side, was the best way to recreate the volume of an object or human figure. This setup is not random, it allows to emphasize the form in a harmonious way. There is enough to see in the part receiving the light and a dynamic gradation towards the shadows. When painting a portrait, for example, when the light is directly in front of the subject, it is too strong and crushing. The shadows disappear and the volume is less harmoniously highlighted. When the shadow is too present, on the contrary, the light is missing on the main areas. This can create an interesting dramatic effect. However, one must keep in mind that this is an artistic choice that will blend the subject into the background and thus make it less present. According to the classical order of light already used by the old masters, the subject is lit from above and from 3/4, preferably with a soft, diffuse light source. The more the light source has a large diffusion surface, and the closer it is to the model, the softer the shadows on the face. This avoids unpleasant shadows, especially under the nose, which can be seen with a punctual light source. Keep in mind that the old masters used simple north-facing windows and placed their models so as to obtain this diffuse lighting. For your own light source, try to have the same window effect, either with actual natural light with an actual window or by diffusing your light as much as possible with, let's say, a white sheet, or by bouncing it on the ceiling or using a softbox, which is commonly used in photography. Here are the 5 main steps to accomplish a painting with this classic light distribution order. On purpose, I'm going to divide this demonstration into very segmented parts so that you see the various stages, but keep in mind that in reality, a painting follows a more organic and spontaneous workflow. Alright, so here are the main 5 stages regarding lights and shadows. 1. The block-in. First, we block in the outline of the subject by delimiting the contour of the silhouette, of course, but also what beginners tend to forget, by delimiting the shadow shapes. Thus, an eye will be painted with a very different shape depending on whether or not it's lit or in the shadow. We often think that eyes should look like this, but in reality, depending on the shadows, the outline might actually look more like this. The principle is to include the outline of the shadow shape in the block-in as accurately as the general contour or silhouette of the outside of the shape. Getting the right shape for the shadows is very important, because this is these shadow shapes that will allow us to recreate the illusion of volume later on. Really quick break. If you like my approach and want to learn more about painting, know that I have 2 courses available. My first course is focused on oil painting techniques from beginner to intermediate, and my second course is more advanced and focuses on color theory and its application for painters. If you want to learn oil painting and color, I'm sure that they can help you. Alright, let's go back to the video now. 2. Shadows. The second step is to fill in and flesh out the shadow areas. We'll preferably start with the darkest blacks of the subjects, which will serve as a reference for the graduation of all the values of the painting. Three, midtones. The third step is to paint the midtones or halftones, and there is a wide variety of midtones, so I suggest starting with the local value or local color, i.e. the color most faithful to the color of the subject, outside of the variations of lights and shadows. If we imagine that the subject is lit with the most neutral and equal light possible so that there is no highlight or shadow visible, we obtain an average value, an average color that's the closest to the real color of the object. And this is what we call the local color. It is the local color that gives the most reliable information on the natural hue and chroma of the subject. And of course, what really matters for us if we talk about lights and shadows, the local value of the skin. Once we have this local value, we can divide it into several steps or gradations. First, we have the light midtones, those that are getting closer to the highlights, and the dark midtones, that is to say, those which are getting closer to the shadows. The midtones are really essential for the volume of the painting, and you can't really get great realism and impression of volume if you don't paint them successfully, especially the transition between midtones and shadows, which is really a key in figurative paintings. 4. Highlights. The highlights are a reflection of the light source on the surface of the subject. On a portrait, for example, the highlights can have a very different appearance depending on the shiny or matte appearance of the skin. On an oily or wet skin, the highlight is an almost perfect reflection of the source, but on dry and matte skin, the highlight is, on the other hand, very discreet, even invisible. Anyhow, the highlight is always the point directly facing the light source. 5. Reflected light. The reflected lights in the shadows are an important part to include at the end. These are faint areas of light integrated into the shadows. They are barely lighter than the shadows, but are just enough to create very rich and varied shadows. Reflected lights are due to light rays that do not strike the subject directly, but bounce off the walls or surrounding objects and come back to light the shadows from the other side very slightly. For example, if you have a red wall next to your model, or if you're holding a red sheet of paper, the reflected light will have a red tint, but if you hold a blue paper, it will have a blue tint, and so on. Alright, so here is the classical order of light. With a single light source, the three-dimensional shape is divided into two major parts, the light area and the shadow area. This sphere illustrates the classical distribution of light. Among the light parts, the area directly facing the light source is called the highlight. It's a reflection of the light source on the object. Then we have the light midtones, the medium and dark midtones. The shadow is divided into two parts: the core shadow located on the surface of the object, and the cast shadow projected on other surfaces. Among the core shadow, we can distinguish the terminator line or the bedbug line, which is the darker part, the kind of the line separating the light from the dark, and the reflected light, which is caused by lights that's bouncing off surrounding surfaces and slightly lightening the object from the shadow side. Finally, among the cast shadow, we can distinguish the shadow and penumbra. The shadow proper is the darkest and most obvious shadow, while the penumbra is a diffuse mixture of light and shadow, visible mainly around the contours of the shadow. Now that you have this model in mind, you can exploit the infinite variety of nuances it offers. The secret of the old masters is that this order of light and shadow allows you to paint any subject with a powerful and realistic light, but it also allows you to create every imaginable variation. From this very simple basic model, many variations are possible. We can simply ask the model to turn his or her head differently to observe the different angles of incidence. We can place the light on the side to give a more clear-cut aspect and divide the subject in two. We can have a second light source in place of the reflected light, such as, let's say, a candle, to give more vitality to the shadows and animate them from within. We can work with harder shadows, more unusual placements of the light source. We can have fun placing the light source itself inside of the composition, maybe hiding it cleverly to create surprising effects. Truly, anything is possible once you understand how to master light and shadow. And in the end, if you have to remember one thing, it's that you're not painting color, you're painting light. And only light creates color. That's going to be it for this video. If you liked it, remember to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to support the channel. Again, a huge thank you to my Patreon members. This video wouldn't be possible without your support. If you want to join the community, you'll find a link in the description below. You'll also find the link to both my courses, my oil painting course and my color course. Alright, that's going to be it for today. As always, my friends, joy and inspiration to you. Bye.